So, hello everyone. You're very welcome to our February Fields of Knowledge session. If this is the first time you're joining us, it's great to have you here. And if you're coming back to us from a previous session, you're very welcome back. So today's session is a bit left of field, I suppose, from what we usually discuss here on Fields of Knowledge, where we'll focus on the topic of relationships, partnerships, community and connection in rural life. I suppose being consistent with the Valentine's month that we're in, and we'll just build on that topic. And it's interesting, this topic in a because I think it's one that people like instinctively know about, but it's very rarely spoken about. And that's what we want to try and do here, is try and normalize these conversations more, particularly through fields of knowledge. Where through the Northeast Centre, we host these sessions as part of our outreach efforts, where typically we bring together researchers, practitioners, and community members and leaders to tackle or kind of unpack some of the most pressing issues that rural America faces today, particularly through the lens of the farming community. So my name is Conor Hammersley, and I'm one of the researchers here at the centre, and I moderate these sessions. And as you can see on our screens here, we have a great panel today who's going to unpack this topic with us. And I'm very grateful for the crew here for jumping on, because as you can imagine, it's not something that people are necessarily typically putting up their hands to talk about or explicitly share their own experiences with. So I'm very grateful to the crew here. And just before I introduce them, as always, just a couple of housekeeping rules. So the chat function is open for attendees, and we encourage attendees to really engage in the topic today, to pop in any questions, queries, reflections that you might have, and to really become part of the discussion as it develops. I'm also conscious that the topic today, it's might be more of an intimate or kind of sensitive topic. So if we could just be careful or just be mindful of everybody when we are sharing any thoughts, reflections, or views as the session develops. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel today. So the first man we have is Gregory Salvatore, who's a fourth-generation farmer based in Damascus, Pennsylvania. Greg manages a 60-head beef and dairy operation. He's a heavy-duty diesel technician with 13 years experience and a full-time single parent. Greg brings lived experience of balancing farm life, family, and community in rural America. The next up we have is our very own Dwayne Martin. So Dwayne is the ROPS hotline coordinator here at the Northeast Centre. And prior to that, he'd been a dairy farmer for 42 years. Dwayne has also served as the Delaware County Farm Bureau President from 2006 to 2001, and as New York Farm Bureau District 9 State Director from 2019 to 2021. Dwayne has a keen interest in all matters related to agriculture and rural life. And last but not least, then, we have Destiny Tremblay. Destiny is a research coordinator here at the Northeast Centre, and who also comes from a farming background. Her educational background is in psychology, with a Bachelor of Science in Applied Psychology, focusing on a rural community track. Both Destiny and I have been heavily focused on the individual and community level impacts of farm consolidation across New York State over the last year. And I suppose one of the impetuses for this session, or what gave rise to a session like this, was that it had been relayed to us through a lot of our qualitative work, through interviews and focus groups with farmers, about these dynamics and the difficulties of building relationships in rural America. So folks, thank you very much for joining us. How are you all doing? Are we excited?
Good. Yeah, a little bit.
Great. So Dwayne, I might come to you first. Dwayne, you've been involved in nearly every aspect of farming and rural life for a long time now. If you just want to give us like the dynamics or set the scene for a farmer, and how that the dynamics of being a farmer kind of intersect with relationships.
Well, I guess the best way to describe it, I'll give you a little bit of my background. Most of the fights I've had with girlfriends, and my ex-wife actually revolved around the farm itself because farming can be very demanding. Um,
Yeah.
there was an old saying I once heard from my grandfather, farmer has his wife, then he has his second wife, which is his farm. And quite often, if you don't, in the case, if you don't have a wife or a partner that is understanding to that, that does create a lot of friction and turmoil within the relationship and within the farm itself. I remember a conversation with one of my farm credit loan officers, where she said she had to testify in a divorce hearing because the farmer was getting divorced and the spouse did not know anything about the farm, and she had to explain farm finances
Right.
to the
Right.
court.
Mhm.
And I think what has made it even more, things have changed. Like my parents met at a dance, and then they met again in a car ride going to Woodstock, which we lived. My sister and I later found out when my sister turned 21. We told my parents no more, but that's the joke for everybody. But it's like my grandparents, they met in high school. My great grandparents, they met at church, and a lot of that infrastructure that was there for farmers to meet, because everybody was a farmer
Right.
a
Right.
100 years ago, 50 years ago in rural America, and even 20 years ago, there was still a strong agriculture community, but it's not there anymore. And it's very hard to describe what farming, because when you get up in the morning, you're a farmer. When you have breakfast, you're a farmer. You're a farmer when you're working. You're a farmer at lunch. You're a farmer at supper
Right.
time. And you think about it when you go to bed. And that can make it very hard if you don't come from that background to, number one, fully appreciate it. I mean, the good things about farming, and also understanding the tough things about farming,
Right.
such as the
Right.
hours.
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't want to
I think
hog all the
that's.
time up, so I'm gonna.
Right.
I mean, because
No, I
I
think
have a
that.
motor mouth here, so.
Right. I think that's a great scene setter to Ian. You know, you're just kind of coming at it from like the micro level dynamics, but then also I loved how you put in, you know, the contrast between your parents' generation and the kind of informal places that I suppose they would have taken for granted, that, you know, where you could just naturally meet people and stuff like that. And like the slow decline of those kind of things that, Destiny, we have kind of slowly came across in our research. But I might just go to you first, Greg. I don't know if you want to just like give us a bit of introduction from your own perspective and what things are like. You know, you said you've a dairy and a beef herd operation, and what it's like to to find social spaces in, I suppose, in rural areas.
Well, well, like Dwayne said, like, back they had the Grange halls, they had dances, they had, get-togethers and stuff, which they don't have anymore. I mean, our Grange Hall here is closed down and people turned it into a house. You know, it it's in my area in Wayne County, there's been just a slow decline of ag in general. Um, Within my neighborhood, there's a dozen empty farms there where there's, somebody else will mow the hay or sell the hay, or some people who do the
Yeah,
brush. There's just not the population, anymore. Um, it's slim pickings, I mean,
right.
it's, and that the online dating is just a, adds another dynamic to it, but they're again trying to verify like that's an actual human who created the account,
Yeah, it's
or
insane.
the
Yeah,
the person who created the account actually matches the picture which is on the account, which is
right.
a whole nother, and I've tried everything from farmers only to Bumble, Tinder, you name it. It's a dating app. I've tried it just out of curiosity.
Right.
And I mean, I mean, I don't know where I am in Wayne County, Pennsylvania. I'm 100 miles from anybody, basically, is what it seems like too. Which is another aspect. Is people don't realize like for me, I can't get in a car and go drive 100 miles to meet somebody
Right.
because I have to turn around and come back and take care of the cows because the
Hmm.
way our setup is, there isn't anybody to feed cows. So people don't want to, you tell them where they live and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to drive that far. Well, then I guess you're not really interested, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's then, to get into like the people think because you have all this land and this equipment that you have a lot of money. Well, all your money is tied up in this land and equipment and maintenance and time and fuel and everything. So then people don't understand. If you even people who have actually grew up on a farm don't understand. I've
Hmm.
dated people who grew up on farms, and it it didn't work. I mean, it's it's just another farming is hard enough. Then you add trying to do relationships on top of it. It's just it makes it almost impossible.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And a lot of people don't have some people don't communicate very well,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is another aspect of it. Because I've people that I have dated before and past, their communication, the way they communicated was yelling. Like
Hmm.
it's really hard. There's an old saying: it's really hard to kiss the lips at night that chew your ass all day.
Right.
So
Right. 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 I think,
it's
yeah. Yeah, I think like so I'm in a relationship now, but it's only like relatively recent development. I've been in a relationship now like the last six months or so. And but prior to that, like even independent of all the variables you were talking about there, Greg, it's difficult to find a partner or someone that you match with or that you can easily or seamlessly share company with. And then over time for that to like develop as well. So even even just the two different characters meeting and trying for that to seamlessly or naturally flow together is challenging. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of kind of trial and error with this kind of game. I think Destiny. I'm conscious of just getting your voice and expertise and knowledge into the room. I'm not sure. I know you were doing a bit of background reading on this about like data and demographic characteristics and stuff like that that give kind of the wider backdrop of this, and maybe some of our own kind of qualitative work that we collected. I'm wondering, I don't know, where would you like to come at this from?
Yeah, so I think pulling from a lot of the work that we did in Delaware County, where we heard a lot of different stories from our participants about the struggles that farmers in rural spaces face when trying to find a partner, or even if they do find a partner and then they end up, having breaking up or getting divorced because of the demands of the farm. I remember one of our participants said she had married, her husband had a farm already, and she grew up on a farm. And she said to us, I'm sure you remember, this would have never worked if I didn't grow up on a farm.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so that's really interesting, but I want to bring in the perspective of farm closure and consolidation and the fact that there are less people who live on farms now, and with that it's kind of like this feedback loop of less people having knowledge of farms, a greater stigma of farmers and the demands that farmers face. And then with less knowledge, there's less of a social space for these farmers to get together. It's also, I think, as we can see here, the two people who are farmers or were farmers are men. It's a very male dominated field.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so, but also with that, with, a bachelor farmer who never gets married and never has kids, there's no one to succeed the farm. So that's also a perspective that I wanted to talk about, the idea of succession and
Mhm.
farmers, you know, they usually pass their farm on to their children. And when you aren't, in the position to have a child, it kind of mucks everything up.
Right. There's some, as they're talking, there's some really good data on, in some quite regional or remote areas that between the ages of like 18 to about 45, the ratio of males to females is 3:1. And it kind of goes back to the complicated, it kind of goes back to the complicated backdrop of the patrilineal role of assets in rural areas, in that the male line of assets in rural areas, and that for for females, then they tend to migrate out of rural areas, go into urban areas, seek jobs, more educationally orientated jobs, while the sons, there can be an expectation on sons, particularly if there's assets in the family, that they will keep on the family name and keep it there. So it lends to this strange dynamic where you have this imbalance of this gender imbalance or the sex imbalance occurring in rural areas, and then your pool of opportunity is narrower. And again, against the backdrop of some of the stuff that we've looked at, Destiny, farm consolidation, because if there's not as much money to go around a rural community, it affects local shops, it affects school numbers, it affects, bars, socials, other social spaces where people, because they're not just not economically viable anymore. So there's this wider cyclical aspect of it that's occurring. And we will, I promise, get onto some of the more positive or opportunistic aspects of this in a short bit. Sorry, Dwayne, I know I see you're anxious to jump in there.
No, I'm just, all I was going to say was, I was going to head on a little bit of what both our Gregory and Destiny said there. I think with the consolidation within the dairy industry, like Destiny had mentioned, there's less people that know about agriculture, and Gregory touched on it about what he's seen in his town. And I think it also affects the general attitude people have towards farmers.
Right.
I'll give you an example from my own Dayton world. I remember we went to see a concert at the state fairgrounds. It was when I was much younger. I could stay up all night, and we were coming back, and my girlfriend at the time, her friend, she asked her friend for some gas money. We were using my vehicle, and her girlfriend made this comment, and I about actually hit the brakes on the throughway and threw him out. She made the comment, "Well, your boyfriend's a farmer. He gets all this free government money and is living like a king." And I just, of course, I went ballistic, which I know a lot of people find it very hard with me. I probably sound more like Tony Soprano for the 5 minutes of my rant, but that is just the general attitude, I think, that's out there. People just don't understand the pressures and the hoops we jump through, and they see all this money that may be appropriated to farmers in a farm bill, but when it gets broken down, it's very, very little. You're lucky if you can pay one bill with it,
Well, Dwayne, like the farm bill, people don't realize how that's broken down. A lot of the farm bill is like SNAP and food stamps and stuff. Mm-hmm. And, you got like part of that too is you get people on social media, these big YouTube farmers and stuff. Primarily some of the row crop guys, I think like the Millennial Farmer and stuff, they have a giant fancy operation. So people see all this stuff and they say if he does get, they equate that big operation, all that fancy new equipment, with getting government money. Mm-hmm. So they think if he has it, then all of them are getting it, And as far as I know, I've never gotten a check from the government for any subsidies, and I'm pretty sure the previous generations haven't. Because my grandfather was the type that he wouldn't let them come in. He says, because once you let them into your farm and start giving you money, they start telling you how to do things. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't his, and he grew up in the era of he went from transition from horses to tractors, he grew up in that, so, I mean, he, the talk about the consolidation they went from, the horses and milk cans and, the creameries where there was, you were bringing your milk in cans to the creamery down the road. Now it goes in a truck, and my milk used to go from here in Wayne all the way to New Jersey.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the financial aspect of that sort of stuff, with the fallacy that every farmer is getting this big fat check every month.
Right.
So like it's part of that is people too, the social media aspect of it, and you try to get out there to try to talk to some of these people, and they are just so dead set that they think they know how farms run, when they have never even set foot on a farm. They don't know
Yeah.
which end of the cow to feed and which one you have to scrape the manure away from. To them, I mean, I read a
Yeah.
study here a few years ago that said 16% of the American population thought brown cows gave chocolate milk.
Hmm.
And that goes to show that the people are so divorced from the reality of how things work. And there's another study I read that the average population in the United States is somewhere between 3 and 5 generations removed off the farm.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and how to fix that, to bridge that gap, I don't know. Like if that it's the education system isn't doing it for sure. I mean, and you try to talk to people, I don't know what the fix is for that, to how to make people
Right.
understand the.
Right.
Let's see
Because
what.
I think Greg, like as that all feeds into the wider climate of what we're talking about here, and doing, is your experience there and stuff like that. It's hard to know where that stems from, and and for those people who are not from the center here in Fly Creek, just outside Cooperstown, Dwayne is the sweetheart of the center here. Weekly basis, we get cakes. We get cakes brought in from the Martin household. um, so.
Thank you, Erica. I saw her clapping.
But anyway, just another point that I want, there can be a tendency also for this session to think that to put like being in relationship on like a pedestal or something, and that's not the case. Like it's perfectly okay not to be in a relationship too as well, and there might be like, I don't know, a societal kind of, I don't know, elevated nature of being married or in relationships and stuff like that. But I don't think that that's what we want to do, because I would think that there's nothing worse than relationships, be it with anybody, being in them if they're not right either. So and I'm sure there are plenty of people that has occurred with. So I just like want to add that aspect to it, and then bring it back to the broader topic of stigma associated with this session. And I don't think that's solely associated with the farming community, because when we went around to other academics in this space, broadly in this space, or service providers in this space, and Destiny will allude to this too, we found it very difficult to get people to jump on this session. Even people who have been broadly in this area of rural isolation, remoteness, connection, and stuff like that. For one reason or another, they didn't want to jump on this session. And I would say that we haven't had that for previous sessions. So I think there's a wider kind of hesitancy to go at this topic or to understand this topic. And I would say even from a research level, it's very difficult to find good data even on this topic. Would that be fair to say, Destiny?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Even there's a lot of data on isolation, rural versus urban. There's much more higher rates of isolation reported in rural spaces. But as far as relationships, it's kind of this like thing that nobody wants to approach, right? And I think that's a great point that you make, that we did have a very hard time finding people who would, speak openly about their experiences. And it's kind of this taboo thing where, and it is a very personal topic, but I think to try to bridge the gaps and see what we can do about it from an outsider's perspective, we need to have these conversations and really understand the root of the problems to try to, I know that, and I'm echoing what everybody has said at this point, but the idea of the capacity to build community in rural places in general has diminished quite some. And then adding on top of that, it's hard to make friends, and then it's even harder to find somebody who would want to be in a relationship with you. So all very interesting stuff, but if we want to, like, there's research being done and work being done in the Midwest that I know about, and I know in Arkansas, Brittany talked about it in our last session, where they are providing settings for community capacity building and mental health support as well, but more broadly, just creating spaces where farmers can come together and talk with each other, whether it be a free pancake breakfast or dances. I know that contra dances around here have been coming back, so I think that's pretty cool. At the Grange Halls, I know Greg mentioned we do have some Granges open here still, but any possibility to increase the capacity for community building is great. So
Great. Yeah.
Well,
Great.
Is
I do know
Destiny
in,
with, oh, sorry.
sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Oh, okay. Well, I was got Destiny's background is psychology, right? Now,
yes.
is there some kind of psychological implications of this? Because I don't know, in my case, and I seem to attract certain personality types, and none of them seem to, I don't know what I want to call it, are beneficial to my mental well-being or emotional well-being. I seem to attract these sort of types, like they think they can get something. They get a place to bring, hay for their horses, or a pet, a barn space for their animals, or it just seems to be they don't want to put in. I would it's think of it the farm like a bucket. You put everything you have in the bucket, and they keep taking stuff out of the bucket without putting in the bucket. Eventually, your bucket's going to run out, and that's kind of the way I look at it. And in my experience, everybody seems to be taking it out of the bucket, and I'm the only one putting it in. So I don't know whether that's my own stupidity, I guess would be not the best word for it, that it comes to the point where you're like, okay, I can't do this like this anymore. Things have to change. And usually what happens is the other person either leaves or makes the relationship so miserable that you make them leave. So, and I'm the type of person, when we get to that point, I will pack your stuff and set it outside for you, so you don't even have to come anymore. Like, and I've done that before. I have boxed up stuff and put it so they can come pick it up, and that's it, and I don't know whether that's a psychological thing, that, how you get people, I don't know what you want to call them, like a parasitic personality, where they are attracted to people who are not like that. Like growing up, I was always the nice guy, like in high school, like if the girl's car had a flat tire, I was the one that got the text message on the way to school in the morning, I have a flat tire, and I would go change their flat tire so they could go to school. And it has taken me probably 30 years to figure out that doesn't work. It doesn't get me nowhere. And the last 10 years I have gotten a lot better at cutting off that sort of, only people that are only around just because you can do something for them.
Right.
Well, and I think to touch on what Gregory just said, I do think Dayton in general and society has changed, and the same with the view of what family life should be. At least that has been my encounter, because at least with the two really serious relationships I had, and they even this last one I had, they seem to start. It seems like demands start being put on the farmer, me, the farmer, me, your farm, your family, or me. And if you ever get in that type of situation, you don't feel, you know, which way to turn. And eventually, for me, the most simplest thing was to follow, like what I was joking before the session began, listen to what my cow said. When my cow turned around and spit at a person, I knew, okay, time to end it, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's like that, Dwayne. I've always made it. The cows were here before you, and if be it, the cows will be here after you. Because and part of that, I don't know. I don't think some people like. I think being not the priority.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I think Gregory, you just hit that because there was one relationship where one lady, she said, I can't do this with you anymore because I'm not number one. She said, you know, because I couldn't go one day to something she wanted. I had a calf calving and nobody was there on the farm, and I wanted to make sure it was out of my prized cow McGuire. I wanted to make sure that calf got delivered right and she was okay. And boy, I got quite a tongue lash, you know.
well, there it goes back to the kissing them lips that were chewing your ass all
Yeah.
day.
So guys, I'm conscious of the chat function, and I see Erica has a little question here, and I just encourage other attendees, if you have any reflections, comments, or questions on what's been brought up so far, please feel free to engage in the Q&A or the chat function. So Erica says here that there certainly have been changes in where people meet, but do you all think there are still viable spaces for folks to meet in rural places? What groups or types of people are trying to bring together folks in rural communities? Are there any examples that any of you are aware of? I know there's a couple through like Cornell Cooperative Extension, but they're very much so like farming focused and like exclusively farmers. I think what we're talking about here is not necessarily exclusively farmers, but rural social spaces where people can meet and you know, form friendships, potentially form relationships, all these kind of things. Are there any examples that you might have where you've seen that done effectively?
I know in Delaware County Farm Bureau, my successor, Barb Hanselman, she's got 3 young single boys. When I say young, they're early 30s, and what she has tried doing through our county farm bureau is she's tried to have more like a farmer's night out and invite, and she always encouraged people that were going to attend, invite somebody else to come with them too. She was encouraging that. Another thing, and I know this is being done, I believe in either Norway or Finland. It's one of the Scandinavian countries in rural areas. They still host like a dance, and for everybody in town. They, instead of having maybe one village, they may take a group bus and bring a bunch of people in, because I know the Amish do that, for instance. They will truck a bunch of young people together to meet.
That's really
I
interesting.
am not aware of anything down here in Pennsylvania that's going on. If it is, I haven't been made aware of it, no. Other than your local bars and that sort of stuff, you know, on weekends, that's pretty much about the only thing. Go out, have a couple beers and a couple drinks and shoot some pool. And there, you know, there again, you're limited, you know, to your normal clientele.
I want to go back slightly then to the topic that we were just talking about there. And subconscious, I think relationships and that are about kind of coming together and finding an equilibrium or finding a better space. And this is against the backdrop of farming being a very demanding job too as well. And I can understand it from the other side. You know, if you're constantly saying to me that you can't do this, you can't do that, because the farm is never ending. So I'm wondering, to play devil's advocate with your boat, what could farmers do themselves, or do you think they could do themselves to make that more hospitable. Now, I'm fully granted that there are other aspects associated with that. Look, are you fully into the person in the first place, even before you get into that side of things? But do you think farmers could themselves help themselves in those scenarios in terms of getting in help, support, so they have more time?
There's probably things we could do, but then it comes down to finances. If I'm a small operation, I don't have the money to hire somebody to come feed cows. Well, and like getting family to do it. Well, I have a younger brother and he has his own business and kids and a wife and all that, and they're building a house and stuff. So there's, to take other people to help, not always viable. I mean, it is, if you have a big operation where you could have employees already,
Right.
it's not, it's a cash flow to have somebody come in. And, nobody's going to come in for $10 an hour to milk 200 cows or,
Right.
so,
Right.
that goes back to that, a lot of this, a lot of this all stems from the financial side. Everybody wants to be the Kardashians and, they want the Escalade and all this, they want the King Ranch F-350 dually and the horse trailer and, to be able to go and, do horse shows on the weekends and that sort of stuff, um, because I've dated a few horse girls in my life, women. So, I mean, it's, if you have a pocket full of money, it's not a problem.
Right.
And
Okay.
a lot of it all comes back to that. In a lot, 90% of it comes back to that. And
Right.
other parts of it are like, I get up in the morning 6:30. I put my son on the bus. I go to the barn, take care of the cows. I either go to the field or I work on equipment. Um, like I do all my own equipment maintenance. Like I have my disc mower tore apart. I have, hydraulic system tore apart on another tractor. I have a full shop here at my house. So, I mean, for me, you know, and then I get 3 in the afternoon to get my son off the bus. We come home, we do homework, and then him and I go to the barn and we do our chores at night. So, I mean, it doesn't give a lot of time to do, you know, most things like, but, well, there's days where, on a Saturday or, rainy days or something like that to go and do a movie or something like that, or to go out. Like I took my son to a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese a couple weeks ago. I mean,
Hmm.
you can make time to do it. Luckily, like my cows don't care they can't read a clock, so they don't really care. And they've been accustomed to because I'm not a morning person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Traditionally,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not a morning
Yeah.
person. Like
Yeah.
I've always been a night owl, even since I was a little kid, like baby
Yeah.
size. Like I've never been up early in the morning.
Right.
So, I mean, I can go, and my days are 12 to 18 hours pretty much every
Yeah.
day, 7 days a week.
Right.
Like I only have 60 head of cows, but I cover, well, primarily, I don't do any corn. Most of my cows are all grass fed. So I cover about 220 acres of ground a year by myself.
Hmm.
So, I mean, luckily with a tractor, I mean, a lot of times there's room if, I've had a few dates where they come roading the tractor with me for the day, and it, if they can survive riding in 115-degree heat in the tractor with you all day, so but usually it doesn't go much more past that, or
Right.
nighttime feeding chores, or 3 o'clock in the morning checking the cameras for cows and stuff, I mean, or having to leave dinner and come home. I've had that
Right.
happen a few times. Be out on a date and check the cameras in the barn and look, got a cow having a calf, and got quick get the waitress and get your check and box your stuff up and out the door you go.
Right. Right.
So but that's just it's not a job, it's a lifestyle,
Yeah.
because your entire existence revolves around the cows.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there goes back again to people not wanting to be second fiddle to cows.
Yeah. Hmm.
And it's bad enough. Like I have a son. It's even, you've got cows and a kid. There's 2 red flags apparently.
Right. Right.
Because it's I don't it kind of just snowballs. At some point, it's just like this gets out of control. You know.
Dwayne, do you
Um,
want to come in on anything there?
Were you asking
Yeah.
me, Connor?
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
my initial point was, can farmers,
Well, I
help themselves with this?
I try. My family was pretty supportive of me, especially my mother was willing to help me if I needed to take some time off. But I could never. I think the entire 41 years I farmed, I maybe was away from the farm for a total of maybe 7 days overnight. The entire 41 years. I never, and this is going back to when I was a kid too. So my farming career really started when I was about 14. Um, but if you have a good family and someone that that understands, that goes a long way. And I think maybe some of it too is because farmers are also so independent. Sometimes we get a little too headstrong too, because I've
Mhm.
seen that in some farm relationships. Um, Sometimes the farmer's too headstrong. I think some of it's personality as well.
Right.
And it's
Right.
like going back to what Gregory says. I do think, though, farmers maybe, I hate to use the word targeted, but I know what he's saying because I have seen it in a couple other instances besides myself, where you take some predatory people, intentionally or unintentionally, did seem to like they did like to prey on farmers because farmers are lonely. You spend a lot of time by yourself. I spent a lot of time just talking to my cows. I mean, there were some days the only person I saw was my family and the milk truck driver, and that was it. And I think maybe as far as the other thing for farmers for helping themselves, I think too farmers should be willing. I think also too that they should be also willing to take a chance once in a while too. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right. Yeah.
because I think some of it too is you get burned so many times you tend to close yourself off.
Right. Again.
And
Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
You can
Right.
only kick the hornet's nest so many times.
yeah,
So we've covered a nice bit of terrain so far, and from the like social stigma associated with it, the infrastructural dynamics associated, lack of social spaces with it, and then also different types of initiatives that have developed around things to create social spaces where people can meet. Destiny, I want to bring you back in, if you have any like thoughts or reflections on maybe what could be done from this, from our perspective, maybe that we could get maybe a better understanding of this, maybe from a research perspective.
Well, I think the first thing that needs to be done is, we talked about it earlier, more discourse on the topic, more qualitative work done interviewing people about their personal experiences. And then also from that, you can build, there's been initiatives with, Greg mentioned earlier, farmers only, more targeted, catered to farmers to try to
Right.
help with that type of stuff. And then also, expanding on the work that's been done in the Midwest and Arkansas, with the just trying to build more community capacity and figure out ways how you can introduce those settings. And it's hard also, I know we touched on it a little bit, I feel like nowadays young people are very heavy on dating apps, meeting people organically is not something that happens a whole lot. Even when you go out socially, it's kind of like you go out with your friends and you're not really expecting to meet a lot of people. So that would be an interesting dynamic to explore further. And
I
I
have a
think it
question
has
on
been,
that, Destiny.
yeah,
On that, is there a way to like the thing with social the like farmers only? If
yeah,
there was a way to verify people that are on there,
hmm
and it's not hard, if that would be the thing to me that would probably be the number one step in that app's thing that needs to happen is to
Mhm.
verify.
Mhm.
They can do it on other platforms.
yeah,
It's easy to do. I mean, I mean, and it wouldn't take that much, and I think that would go a long way to, you know, you in putting, something and invest your time into somebody, talking to them and that online, and to come to find out they're not even who they are. They live
right,
halfway around the world, you know, and unless that's what you're looking for. But you know, I personally don't really. I'm not interested in somebody that lives 7,000 miles away.
yeah,
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, I mean,
yep,
it, so I mean, if there was a way to figure out how to verify accounts, verify that these people are who they are,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
whether it's facial, like facial recognition on your phone, or through your like I guess your driver's license number or some sort of something like that, like through your ID. But that's something I think that would make a big difference.
Is it,
yeah,
man, all those things that Greg, like so much today is getting so much, getting very so elusive with the rise of AI and how sophisticated AI is nowadays.
Well,
Um,
AI is good, but I don't know, to somebody who's very, I don't know, more discerning and logical thinking, you can distinguish some of these AI pictures and videos. I mean, you can't do them all, but I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, totally.
some of them are blatantly obvious, and then some of them you have to sit down and think. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Um, I'm just conscious we're coming up on well, we're gone past time now at this point, and we might just get some closing reflection. Like it seems to me, ultimately, like the crux of this is at creating social spaces where people can meet, and and I think I don't know. There's something also about how farmers and encouraging farmers and farmers having the courage within themselves to go to these events when they are there, and and for whatever purpose that is and to to build connections within whatever social and community events are available to them. Dwayne, have you any final or closing comments that you'd like to share with us?
well, we definitely can't turn the clock back to the
no.
way it was like when my parents had met. Society has changed. Um, and I think it's going to be an ongoing issue, at least for generational, for rural America. Uh,
Mhm.
I think it also ties into economics as well. I think rural America needs to be willing to attract and keep young people as well. Um, I'll give you an example. Like my high school graduating class was 21. There's only three of us that still live in Delaware County.
Yeah. Mhm.
Majority of my fellow classmates live between the suburbs of Virginia to the suburbs of Charleston, South Carolina. So we need to find a way to make rural America more economically viable to encourage uh, women to stay, and also to get rid of the stigma that agriculture is just a male dominated. Because I've seen one statistic where 49% of the farms in the United States, the principal manager is actually a lady.
Mhm.
And I think that stereotype, I think I don't like that stereotype. That's just a predominantly male dominated, because I've seen some of the best farm managers were actually that I've met over the years have been actually women. Some of the best herds people have been women. Um, I think we need to also encourage opportunities for young ladies to explore those type of careers as well.
Right, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Greg, have you any closing remarks?
Well, to build on that a little bit, like what Dwayne was saying, to get people to stay, we need to have some, like smaller, like dairy processing plants or beef processing plants. That's part of. There's no decent paying jobs here, in the Northeast. Like that's why people drive from like where when I was a diesel mechanic before I bought my cows, I used to drive an hour and a half to Jersey every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's been 3 hours round trip, and I was a head mechanic for a paving contractor. And there is nothing in this area. There's no factories. There is some farms left, like here in Wayne County. There's I want to say there's probably 30 of us left that have, any kind of ties to dairy. At one time, a little bit of history, Wayne County, Pennsylvania was the largest dairy producing county east of the Mississippi back in the 1930s. There was 750 independently owned and operated farms in Wayne County. And now there's around 30.
Right.
My cousin buys antiques, and he happened to buy some old filing cabinets out of an office, and they were all the dairy records from the milk plant.
Right.
So he had books and books and books of all these old records and stuff. So, but the problem, it comes back to having jobs, and a decent job. I mean, if I figured out my hourly wage, I could probably go make more money pushing carts at Walmart than I do with the cows.
There's this wider macro problem, and like dating opportunities is just like a micro symptom of
it's a small symptom of a much larger problem.
A much larger problem. Yeah. So Destiny, have you any closing remarks or final comments that you'd like to leave us with before we finish up?
I think Greg and Dwayne covered what I was planning on saying pretty well.
Sorry, Destiny.
You're fine.
Okay, guys.
Any questions? Do you have any questions from anybody?
I think that's it. Yeah. If any of our attendees do have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat before we finish up. In the meantime, Destiny has put in the post-session survey here. If attendees could fill that out just quickly, it'll only take you 2 minutes less before you close out here. That would be very, very much appreciated. Okay, and just finally, so I'd like to say a big thanks to Greg, to Destiny, and to Dwayne for sharing your perspectives here. I'm very conscious that it is a tricky session to jump onto, so we're very, very grateful for doing that. I think going forward, I think this has given me so much more context for maybe how to build on this for maybe another session into the future, and even perhaps even start to develop some research in this area too as well, because I think it's one of these things that's highly prevalent and not really talked about. So I think the big pat on the back for everyone for showing up today, including our attendees too as well, and for those who and for Erica in particular for her message in the group chat. Very, very much appreciated. So we're back again. We're back again at the end of March.
March 26th.
March 26th, right, where we're going to look at cardiovascular health within the farming community. And then just a final word to the Fields of Knowledge team behind the scenes, to Katrina and to Alison, who work on all the marketing behind the scenes too as well, send out all the emails and information around this session, these sessions, and it's very much appreciated. Okay, good job, folks. Until next time.
See everybody later.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.